Thanks for joining us again. So we just got back from PRI, so the Performance Race Industry trade show. We also went to SEMA. We did a video on that. That's more display car based trade show, where PRI is more booth and product. So we didn't do a video on PRI, but the link for the SEMA video will be in the comments, description, and in our channel. So if you look for that if you're interested. But we're back from all the trade shows, which means it's time to get back to the grind of getting these cars done. So what I'm going to do is strip the rest of the subframe down and then get it jigged up so we can do a tubular subframe. So let's move on to that. Alright, so we got the subframe stripped down. No more control arms, spindles, shocks, nothing that. So the bushings for the subframe to body mounts are left in. I will be going to a solid mount on this, but I just want to make sure that the bushing is still in there for the center for making the jig up. So the main points that we'll be jigging are going to be the 4 subframe to body mounts, and then the 2 points where the transmission mounts are going to go. So we'll be changing those out as well to stiffer ones, but it's going to use the same platform, so we just need these 2 holes at this height and orientation to everything else. The main portion that's the problem when you do an engine swap on these cars is this section here, because transmission is about here and the engine's all here, and it's already kind of twisted at an angle, but the oil pans and everything are always in conflict here. So a couple companies sell oil pans and such, but they're pretty expensive. They're unreasonable at some points. So what I did for B90, which is the red Coupe Quattro with the 2.5 in it, I actually cut this section right here, flat plated it, and then mounted it up in there and found my coordinates I needed in order to put a 1.5 inch chromoly tube with a bend in it that hugged right around the oil pan and everything. So the previous video, I believe that's episode 1, covers that in a time lapse. And then the sway bar mounts were also modified in order to be able to mount a sway bar up in there. We do not have a sway bar in the Audi Coupe Quattro B90 yet, just because it actually doesn't feel like it really needs it yet. But we haven't been on the track yet to really test that thing out to the max. So yeah, let's start making the jig. I think I'm going to use a combination of square tubing and then some chromoly round tubing. So let's get at that. just like that, the welder's curse happened. I got everything tacked up, except here. Went to go tack up that standoff, and I'm out of gas. So, to be continued. Well, after a little bit of debate, I think we're gonna dial back the coolness. And in order to resolve our no gas issue for the TIG welder, we're just gonna switch over to our trusty glue gun.
Woohoo!
So the main structure is done. So the 4 points that it hooks up to the body is subframe to body there, and the corresponding points on the other side. And then this is the transmission mount. So there's 2 holes for the stock mount that bolts up into there. Then there's a one singular peg for the transmission to be mounted to. So those 2 holes are located along with the other side. So for the control arm mounting points here and here, you have to keep that regulated space. My original plan was to hoop it up like this, put a bar that connects the 2 together. So very similar to the 4 points on the bottom here, and then have a 2-point connection here so that it'd keep it square. But you would have to make it removable, because or else you'd have to cut your jig every single time you make one, and that's not the route I want to go. I want to make this so I can make multiples off the same jig and everything still stays true and square. So I'm also thinking maybe of putting it down this way and then connecting it from this tube to this tube and having my detached pointment here. Like I said, either way, either route it has to be detachable so that it can achieve that multi subframe without having to cut it. So we'll see which route we go. I only have one side of the control arm spacing bars done, so I'm gonna get the other side done, and then we'll end up seeing which way I end up going. So stay tuned. All right, the jig is up. Well, it's all welded up. So I'll be able to unbolt this all and then take the subframe out of it and then bolt it back on and then start working there from scratch to make the tubular subframe. So let's get it unbolted. it's all there. Here's our pickup points to the actual body to subframe. Here's the control arm pickup points, and then here's the transmission mount pickup points. So then we just gotta configure it all around that. Hey guys, Car Santa just came by and dropped off some goodies. So let's take a look at them. 2 front fenders, a front bumper, a hood, a rear bumper, black door cards. So as you can see, Christmas has come for the Pearl Audi CQ. So, like I said before in previous videos, when we seen the hood and the condition it was on the Pearl CQ, that would be a good option to go with a B4 front end. So this is a B4 hood and front bumper and rear bumper. There's a ton of different variations, and honestly I can't keep up with all of them. So if anybody knows the exact variation of that one, let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, we have the black door cards. The fenders are just spares. I have another Audi Coupe Quattro body. It's in some pretty rough shape, so I just keep on trying to collect any spares I can as I find them, just to make sure I have everything I need for when I go to do that third car, or if a fourth car comes about or whatever. So it's better to have it, not need it, and then need it and not have it. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. I've got parts for the Pearl CQ to keep on moving forward, and we're moving along well on the subframe. So let's get back to that. Alright guys, well I got both of the left and right subframe portions done. So I'm just mocking up the center connector. So let's take a look at the both left and right. So there's the driver's side with the transmission mount. The mount's not in, but the plate's there. And then here is the passenger side. And there's that plate for the transmission mount as well. Got pretty close to the coolant lines that run to the back, so I had to make some clearance there. I'm also going to make some adjustments to those coolant lines that can be configured in there tighter, but we are making progress. The exhaust is touching super tight, but that can be modified, and also the turbo setup would be quite different on this anyways. So alright, there they are. Alright, so now I'm gonna go cut the center connecting piece that's gonna connect those two, driver and passenger side. So let's go to the saw and do that. This thing has been life-changing. I used to use an abrasive saw. The cuts weren't always super square and I had to adjust them with a grinder or other methods. This thing cuts fast. Honestly, I should have pushed it faster. And it likes to be fed fast. So, alright, let's move on. So I like to take and clean up the tube of all like the slimy mill scale that's on the exterior of it. A little bit of paint thinner or acetone, whatever sauce you like. Alright, then once your sauce is dry, I like to put a phase mark on everything. Just to right in the beginning. That way I don't have to try to do it after a bend or something like that. So there's a line that's ran all the way longitudinal across the tube. That's going to help me for my notches and my bend lines to make sure everything's straight. Alright, so now I'm going to come in here and mark my start of the bend. You know, a lot of people use these markers and I like them, but I only like them for like the first day or two and then they suck. They puke everywhere. They just go dry. So these Milwaukee's Inkzilla have been phenomenal. They, even if you didn't clean up the lime or the scale, the slimy stuff, it still would have wrote on it. Just writes on it nicer and keeps your hands cleaner. Now my notch start, my bend start, not my notch start. My bend start, I'm gonna mark a couple times over the tube here, just because with the line phasing, this one's bending that way, that one's bending this way, this, that, the other thing, then you have your start line everywhere on it, just in case you're going to be this way or that way. So that's why I'm making multiple marks. Alright, measure twice, cut or bend once. Alright, so I marked up my phase mark on the center line of the bend. And then the start of my bend, I marked on my known good start of bend. I guess I'm not going to go into too much detail with this thing because if you have one of these, you probably don't need my advice. You probably have it all figured out yourself already. If you have one of these and you don't have it figured out, then I'm probably not the guy to tell you. Probably just figured this all out pretty much myself and watching other YouTube guys, so I'm gonna lube it up. Lube is good. Even though we just cleaned a bunch of lube off, this is silicone spray lube. I think I've said this before. This stuff works pretty good. I always check all my pins right before going on a bend run. Okay, so that right there is 45. But if I release it, watch the needle here. It's gonna drop back like 4 to 5 you got to go over your number because there's that retention back. Almost spot on for 45. We're like 45 and a half. So, pretty happy. So there's our mark where we wanted our bend to start. And you can see distinctly where the dimple is, where it actually starts to bend. So spot on. I would say that's pretty Johnny on the spot there. So there's 14 and a half. About the center of the pipe. This one's about the center of the pipe. And we have 1.5 inches of clearance. So that's where we're going to drive our notches into. Because this is where the oil pan, transmission, all the good stuff is right here. So I'll grab my trusty Milwaukee marker. Alright guys, so I got that tube all notched up. I put it on underneath the Bean Audi, the one that has the 07K currently hanging in it, so I can figure out the clearance and everything. Figured out the clearance and everything, it worked out great. Took the subframe off, welded it up, and then brought it over to the Pearl CQ, which is the subframe that came off there is the one I used to make the fixture. Fixture, jig, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. That's up for debate, I guess. But I'm going to call it probably both. So that's the one I made the fixture off of. So then I went to go test it on that car, and there was a slight discrepancy in the spacing of the body to subframe mounts. After measuring and cross-comparing, turns out my red CQ, Audi Coupe Quattro, named Bean Audi, is slightly tweaked in the front end. Doesn't come as a huge surprise because the right rear quarters all mudded up from a previous repair, and I know it's been resprayed the whole car, so I should have seen it coming, which I kind of did. That's why I used the subframe off the Pearl CQ to jig everything up, because that car is no accidents, in great shape, etc., etc. So I actually had to cut that piece, sleeve it, and make it right for the spacing. So let's take a look at it. So right there in the center is where I'm talking, where I sleeved it. Other than that, it fits pretty great. Trans mounts lined right up where I needed it. Mounts to the body, slide right on. So I'm going to finish up welding that connection piece. Obviously on the next one I won't have to do that. I'll have the correct measurement for the width of the correct subframe. So that won't be there, and it'll be a nice clean one piece. Gonna put some gussets on this thing, pound some dimple dies in it where I can to make it lighter, stronger, cooler. Other than that, subframe is a success. Thanks for watching, guys.